Hello everyone, welcome back. In this session I'm going to specifically talk about the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe in our calendar. We actually began this last Saturday night with our Selichot. Now in the Sephardic community they've been doing Selichot for almost 3 weeks now, since the beginning of the month of Elul. But in the Ashkenazi community, we begin Selichot the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes it's the Saturday a week and a half before, depending on where Rosh Hashanah falls in the week. So the Selichot service, the Selichot literally means is excuse me. We say excuse me, and it's the beginning of the time when we are looking inside ourselves, self-reflection, trying to find ways for us to improve ourselves. These days, while they are somber, they are not sad. This is a time for us to be joyful in the fact that we have this opportunity each and every year to make changes in ourselves, that we understand that God is truly ready to forgive us and bring us back in. Just like a parent may be disappointed with a child's behavior, but always loves the child and always wants the child to come back. So that's one of the aspects that we view here. And the High Holy Day service tries to capture each of these relationships we might have with God. God as a parent, God as a partner in creation, God as judge, God as king, God as the one who remembers, God is one who is involved in our lives. So each of these aspects and more are found in our High Holy Day prayers. So again, the High Holy prayers follow the same overall arc that I spoke about in our last session. But there's a couple of prayers that we add that are really significant. And one of them is Avinu Malkeinu, literally translated as our Father, our King. And again, it approaches this idea that we are like children, and God is there to help and guide us like a parent would help and guide us, and take care of us like a parent. The Avinu Malkeinu is actually credited to Rabbi Akiva of the first century. The story goes that there was a famine, a drought in the land of Israel, and people came to Rabbi Akiva and they prayed to try and relieve the drought so that they could have food. And Rabbi Akiva composed the Avinu Malkeinu prayer, and as soon as he was done praying this Avinu Malkeinu prayer that he composed, it started to rain, and the people were able to recover from the famine. So we recite it as part of our daily service, and we usually stand with the ark open. Sometimes the ark is closed, and we chant the tune together at the end. Avinu Malkeinu Faneinu Vaneinu, Avinu Malkeinu Faneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu maasim aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshi'einu. Our Father, our King, have mercy on us. Answer us, for our deeds are insufficient. Deal with us charitably and lovingly, and redeem us. So that's the concluding verse of the Avinu Malkeinu, and it's one that the congregation joins in. And actually, I think they look forward to that as part of the service. It's one of those melodies that just ring true for us. So as with all of our services, we have, following that, the Reader's Kaddish, the Kaddish Shalem, and then the Torah service. The Torah readings for High Holidays are chosen very carefully So what do we see in the first Torah reading? The first Torah reading is the remembrance of Sarah to be able to have, so that she could have a child. And the idea of this Torah reading is so that we understand the efficacy of prayer, that prayer does work. And we only have to emulate our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, Leah and Rachel, and as long as we acknowledge and try to be sincere as they are, as they were, then our prayers too will be answered. Unfortunately, sometimes the answer is no. Again, as I said in the last session, the idea of prayers of request is we also ask that God give us what we need, not necessarily what we want. There's a special additional reading, it's called a maftir, a special additional reading on Rosh Hashanah, and it is the offerings that were brought, the special offerings that were brought for Rosh Hashanah, and then also for Yom Kippur. It's the special offerings that were brought for Yom Kippur. As with all of our holidays, there is a special additional reading, a maftir reading, which is representative of the offerings that were brought for that particular time. The reading from the prophets, the Haftorah reading for Rosh Hashanah for first day, is the story of Hannah and her prayers to have a child. They're at the temple for one of the holy days, one of the festivals, and the priest, Eli, sees her praying, but no sound is coming out. She's praying silently. He accuses her of being drunk, and she confronts him and says that, no, I am praying for a child. And she dedicates that child to the temple. She is granted her wish. She has a child, and she dedicates her child to temple service, and he becomes one of the greatest prophets of Israel. His name is Samuel, and he leads the Jewish people from the period of judges into the period of the kings. He is the one who anoints King David. And our sages say, the rabbis of antiquity say, that if Moses had not merited to receive the Ten Commandments, Samuel would have been worthy. That is the level of his holiness and righteousness. Samuel was also he anointed King Saul, he anointed King David, and he lived to see David crowned the king. He did not live to see David crowned king, unfortunately. The reading for the second day, the Torah reading for the second day, is the story of the binding of Isaac. Now, Abraham was commanded to bring Isaac to Mount Moriah, which is now the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and to offer Isaac to God. As he's about to fulfill that mitzvah, an angel cries out, tells him to stop, because Abraham has shown his trust in God. I think this is also a test for Isaac, because Isaac is not a baby here. He's 37 years old, and he goes along willingly. And I believe that this was as much a test of Isaac as it was of Abraham. A ram is then found in the bushes near where he was to offer Isaac. Abraham now understands that the ram is supposed to be offered. He offers the ram as a sacrifice to God, and that is one of the reasons we sound a ram's horn on Rosh Hashanah. It sounded to remind God of who our ancestors are, and they were literally willing to give up their lives for the sanctification of God's name. And so one of the reasons we sound the shofar is to remind God of this, but also to remind us of where we come from and where we could be and what we need to do to get there. So we sound the shofar again in memory of this event. That's the reading for the second day. The Haftorah, the reading for the prophets, as opposed to the story of Hannah, the story, it comes from the book of Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was a prophet who saw the destruction of the first temple. And it's a caution to us, it's a cautionary tale that we should make tshuva, that we should repent, return, come back, and be our best selves. And so as you see, all this ties in with the theme of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the idea of becoming better. After the Torah reading, and after the reading of the Haftorah, we sound the shofar, the formal sounding of the shofar. It's we begin with a blessing, and then we sound the 4 different sounds: Tekiyah, which is the long sound; Shvarim, which is the 3 medium sounds; and then Truah, which is the 9 or more short sounds, each representing a different part of us. The long sound is like an alarm clock waking us up. The Shvarim, the 3 medium sounds, almost like a cry, like we should really think about what we've done and maybe have some remorse over what we've done in the past. And then Truah, the short sounds, are like a call to arms, that we now can get up and do what we need to do. And of course, a lot of fun for everybody is the Tekiyah Gedola, the large Tekiyah, and we always like to see if the person who is sounding the shofar, called a Baal Tokeh, so Tekiyah Tokeh, this person who sounds the shofar, if they'll pass out while they're sounding the shofar, the Tekiyah Gedola. Again, with all of our services, after we complete this, we recite Psalm 145, the Ashrei, and then we return the Torahs to the Ark. The Musaf for Rosh Hashanah is the longest Musaf. The additional service for Rosh Hashanah is the longest of any during the year. There are 3 special sections of the Musaf service, and they're called the Malchiot, the kingship verses, the Zichronot, the remembrance verses, and the Shofrot, what's called the trumpeting verses. In each of these represent a different aspect, again, I mentioned before, the different relationships that we have with God. God is king, sitting in judgment. And so, as you move through, there are verses that we take from the 5 books of Moses, the Torah itself. There are verses then that are taken from the books of the prophets, and then there are verses taken from the Psalms. And you can see through each of the kingship, Machiot, remembrance, Zichronot, and then the Shofrot, the trumpeting verses, these verses are related to each of those concepts and ideas. So as you move through the Musaf service, you can now recognize what's happening, that it's not just random ideas, that each one represents a different aspect of God. So the Malchiot, God sitting, as I mentioned before, God sitting in judgment, God is king, ruler, who has both the aspect of judgment, but also the aspect of mercy. The Zichronot, the remembrance verses, is it's a way for us to express that God remembers our history, that God is the God of history that's been with us. It's especially in our times of trouble throughout our history, from the exile in Egypt, the exile in Babylon, the exile by the Romans at the end of the Second Temple period, and the exile that we're living in now, in a way that hopefully we can relate to in different ways, just as a teacher tries to use several different methods to teach a concept or idea, so too our prayer service does that, using different verses, different ideas within each of these concepts. The third section is the shofar. It's we recall the at Sinai, how we were given Torah at that time, that there was an event that took place 3,300 years ago where our ancestors stood at Sinai and received the law, received not just the law, but the history of the Jewish people. And we begin with that idea of trumpeting verses, that we are awakened with this idea of the trumpet sounding. And again, verses recalling each of those events, like Joshua sounded the trumpet when he went to war to capture the city of Jericho. All of these ideas are contained in the trumpeting, the shofar verses. At the end of each of these sections, we once again sound the shofar. The Musaf then concludes with a beautiful and up-tempo song, Hayom, 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 Hayom. All right, you all know that. And if you don't, by the time we're done, you know it because it's so catchy. And sometimes I get earworm and I think about that tune through the end of Sukkot. That's how long that tune is in my head. So that concludes our morning service, and then Kaddish Shalem, the Reader's Kaddish, Aleinu, and concluding hymns. In our congregation, we also conclude the service with a sounding of the shofar to make sure that everyone gets to hear the complete number of sounds that we're required to hear on Rosh Hashanah, and then of course at the end of Yom Kippur. So then the shofar is not sounded again after the second day of Rosh Hashanah. We do not sound the shofar again until the end of Yom Kippur. Okay, and so we have those service. So that's our morning service. It takes us again from those introductory hymns and psalms through Shacharit, the Torah service, and then the Musaf, the additional service. Again, as I said, though, it's a little different because it is the conclusion. It has these extra verses, these extra sections for the Musaf. That takes us through the High Holiday Liturgy. On Yom Kippur, again, the themes for Yom Kippur are recited in that additional service. We recall the priestly service where they would ask for forgiveness for themselves. They would then ask forgiveness for all the priests and the Levites, and then only then could they get up in front of God, and the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies once on Yom Kippur and pray for the benefit of the entire community of Israel. And so that's replete with bowing. We actually have people come up while the cantor and I actually bow down fully on the ground, and then they help us up. At this point, I'm thinking of hiring Ransom Lyft to do that job because of my age. Anyway, but that really is, for many, they view that ritual as the highlight of the Yom Kippur service. Yom Kippur is the only time when we have 4 amidas, 4 standing prayers during the day. And most days it's the evening, then the morning, and the afternoon. And we have an amida, a standing prayer for each of those services. We have an extra one on Yom Kippur for what's called Ne'ilah, which is the representation of the closing of the gates, that this is the final hour, the final time when we really have to connect with the Creator, with God, with the Master of the universe. and ask for our forgiveness. That's the prayer service. That is essentially it, and I hope you've come to an understanding. I'd like to conclude with this. In terms of forgiveness, God looks to us for an example. If we're willing to forgive others, then God will be willing to forgive us. So take the time during this period, during our High Holy Day season, and if there's someone who's offended you, even if they don't deserve it, do your best to try and forgive them. And then God will take God's cues from us, and God will forgive us. May you all of us, be blessed with a good, sweet, happy, healthy, and joyous 5786. Thank you.